Thanks for coming out. Could we please pledge allegiance? Yeah. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have no Jim tonight for good reasons. I think he has a dog that made it into the finals in Virginia, so we're very excited for him. But we are going to call this to order, and we do have just a couple of announcements. The Board of Supervisors met in executive session on June 25th to discuss a personal matter, in specific, the police officer hiring process, and a personnel matter, in specific, a disciplinary matter, as well as a land acquisition matter, in specific, the land purchase process. So that was the only executive session since the last meeting. And this is not a regular business meeting. All of the meetings can be business because that's how they're advertised. But this is essentially a workshop where we are here to listen to some of the thoughts and ideas that have bubbled up to us that will go no further unless the board decides to. So we're going to start off with a presentation about, well, actually, I don't think we have anyone here regarding the Open Burning Act, but I would like to bring up a few things to mention on that. So that was on the website. Tommy posted some facts that he got from our DEP representative. And I just want to explain this a little bit because I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about this whole thing. I think people think that we're considering our ordinance because we think it's a good idea. We are considering doing an ordinance because we are very remiss in the fact that we haven't done this ordinance. It is a state law. We won't change the law whether we have the ordinance or not. It will just change whether or not we're in compliance. And yes, we will then get some funding for the recycling grant. Either way, the law is the law and these facts are here. So if anyone has questions on this, I can read through it, we can review it. But if someone wants to start off with some questions on it, I welcome that. You want to come on up to the podium, please?
Evening, Dave Buckley, 7 Adelphia Lane, Chester Springs. Question is, if it's a state law, what's the reason to have a local ordinance? Or what would be the additional benefit of having a township level ordinance if it's already state law and county law?
Well, the state requires us to have the ordinance.
We're just not in compliance
State
right
law
now.
that says you must have certain restrictions when it comes to recycling and burning and things, and so we have to have an ordinance that complies.
So their law specific, the state law specifically says townships and municipalities will have their own ordinance addressing this.
Yes.
Okay.
And it doesn't change, like we don't now have additional fines. We don't have additional coverage on it. It's still going to be your neighbor telling someone that you're doing something you shouldn't. And when you are burning a lawful burn, you still have to follow the same protocol as previously, which is to call the fire company. So,
Right.
thank you.
Jack Planchak, Fellowship Road. My question is on the recreational burning. Where did the 2 foot by 3 foot limit?
That's not the recreational burning. I think that is like the backyard food burning. In other words, a fire pit. Recreational burning correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that would be if you were having a bonfire. Bonfire is completely different than the 2 by 3.
It's recreational burning includes heat, cooking, and ceremonial purposes.
It was a 3 by 3 dimension.
The last, did it change? The last edit was 2 by 3. But anyway, where did the 3 by 3 come from?
Yeah, it's what most municipalities have done. It was at the recommendation of DEP.
Okay, because it's not
You know,
It's not a requirement.
You're talking about a burn, not for the purpose of fuel, not for cooking,
No.
not for heat.
I'm pretty sure, certain I'm right. Under recreational was food or for cooking, ceremonial purposes and warmth. And there was 2x3 limit. And my question is, there's nothing in Act 101 or any of the DEP guidance that limits you or forces you into a certain size.
Well, I can tell you, I pushed for as large as we could get, and that was as much as the DEP would push back was the 3x3.
Yeah, that was their recommendation. And it's common when you look at all the ordinances. I'm sorry for the minutes. Might be name again.
Jack Blanchuk.
Thank you.
Yeah. Charlestown Township actually has 0. And they fall under Act 101.
They have, I'm sorry.
Zero.
They have no limit on the recreational burning.
So they have an ordinance that does not have a limit?
They fall under Act 101 too. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you. I think that's the only part of this that there's a little wiggle room on. Go ahead.
Hi, Robin Woodward. I live in Cedar Mill Road. I guess I need some clarification. So as far as your chapter 184 fire prevention, when I read that, that led me to believe or at least question, can or cannot people continue to burn if they call, and indicate that they are choosing to burn? Can they burn branches, trees, logs, roots now? Can they still do that in our township? Once they call in and say, hey.
It depends on the purpose.
Well, the purpose.
If it's a bonfire, yes.
Oh, okay. Now, if it's to remove, I mean, right now, let's face it, people have so many ash trees that have come down, and I get it that it's, and we've had storms that have brought tons of branches down, etc. So it's not like just to remove leaves. I have neighbors who have large wood piles that until this year, they have burned. And sometimes I have it on 3 sides of me. And when I read this, they will allow it to smolder at night. In fact, one of the neighbors hadn't even built his house yet and let it smolder and left. And I just, my husband has asthma issues. First, it's concerning when you go to bed, and according to this, it shouldn't happen after dark, and you can still see flames. And I'm just thinking, where do we have rights and responsibilities in this? And will people still choose? Because one of my neighbors now has 4 huge piles that he's been building up. And in the past, he's always burned, his one big pile, which is, yes, it's beyond 50 feet from our property line. But we have a propane tank very close by and has a historic spring house with a cedar shake roof. And we've lived here for 10 years. I love living here. Many of our neighbors are fabulous. You can get out of your car, talk to somebody right there on the road. I mean, it's a special community, but I'm concerned. Is this a safety issue still or not? Will it be banned? Are they not supposed to be doing this?
I don't think they were ever supposed to be doing
Under
it.
the ordinance, all we're doing is refining what the ordinance currently says.
Uh-huh.
And under state law and under our ordinance, you can't burn except for certain recognized exceptions.
And the exceptions are?
Recreational, you're burning to cook. If you are part of a fire prevention process,
Like a camp.
if it's confined within a barbecue, like backyard barbecue, ceremonial bonfire, and farms on the right to farm laws. There are exceptions to the no burning.
Okay, so these things would fall outside of that purview and should, at this point, they should be illegal.
Well,
Well, there are exceptions that make it, those exceptions are legal burning.
The ones you just
Yeah.
read are
Yeah,
legal.
so
Yes, I
that's the legal
understand.
part.
Now, if someone is ever concerned about what's going on next door to them, which is, you have good reason to be concerned, would you say it's better to call the fire company or the police or both? What do we think is the best recourse? I want to make sure we're clear on that.
Well, both are charged with enforcing it, but I think the fire marshal would be the
Mhm.
first call.
I mean, the fire marshal should already know about that burn for
Yeah,
it to be
and that was one of my, I
permitted at all.
did wonder, you know, like, when I read this, I thought, I wonder how many actually call and say, hey, I want to do this, you know, and a couple, now granted, it's been a couple years ago, but we did call and we didn't know who to call, but, you know, I think we ended up calling 911 because there was some wind and we were concerned. And someone did come out and then they told us, well, he's, you know, he's away, you know, 50 feet out. He has, you know, something there to douse the fire. But these are neighbors who, you know, I feel like we live suburban adjacent now. We are pretty close to each other, right? And it doesn't take much. And one of them burns under a canopy of trees. So you're sort of, you know, you start reading all of these things that suggest that we are in a different time now and we have to really be more mindful. And I guess I hope I don't have to call someone when it's happening. Now, I don't want that kind of relationship with my neighbor. I hate that, you know? So I hope it'll be clear. And I guess the other thing I wondered about too was, have we ever thought about, you know, not everybody's going to go on the site, not everybody maybe will read a newsletter, but the retired teacher in me wonders, is it at all beneficial to just do like a bulk mailing, a one page that just outlines, hey, by the way, this is the way, you know, this is the way, you know, this is the statute now. These are the things we have to follow. And let's just be good neighbors. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea. If, you know, if when the ordinance is actually passed with the clarification, I think it's a good idea to send something to everyone so it's very clear because it's a huge safety issue.
And I think most people want to do the
Mhm.
right thing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Jamie, Nick Vicker. Either the law or this summary are so poorly written, it's hard to know where to start, but I have so many questions. So first, the very first sentence, it's currently prohibited burning of yard waste. So first of all, that's news to probably everybody in this room, because there's hundreds or more of us who burn yard waste all the time. So what exactly, it says a lot of stuff here that isn't clear to begin with, but isn't clear what's changing. You're saying there's already a law saying it's illegal. So there's already hundreds of people breaking the law on a
Correct.
regular basis, but nothing in here says what is changing. And the previous time it came up, there was a mention of a 3-foot diameter. Anything over 3 feet is illegal. So I don't see that in here. Under the third bullet point under state law says DEP does not issue permits for the burning of yard waste. And then the first bullet point under county law says Chester County rules doesn't allow the burning of yard waste without a permit issued by DEP. So which is it?
The DEP will issue permits for facilities, incinerators. DEP will issue permits for the processing of yard waste for municipal compost sites and so forth. They will not issue permits for burning at residential properties.
So the first bullet point under county law doesn't refer to any of us.
No.
Okay, so doesn't need to be there. It's only confusing. The very first
No,
bullet
the first one does.
under county law,
First one does.
why? It says it's not allowing burning of yard waste without a permit from DEP, which doesn't provide permits.
And DEP won't issue a permit for residential properties. So the county law says you can't burn unless you get a permit. And DEP has said, we're not going to issue a permit for a residential property. So it does apply to.
No, but unless there's business owners here who are
Be
building,
able to get one.
so unless there are business owners here who are burning yard waste, which is hard to conceive, anybody business burning yard. So
And
this
again,
is,
the focus is on incinerators, compost sites, not non-residential properties versus residential properties.
again, having nothing to do with anyone here or basically any resident. not basically, specifically, no resident of the township. The very first bullet point under state law says it does not allow waste to be processed or disposed of without a permit. We dispose of our waste, our leaf waste in a compost bin. Have we been breaking the law? Is anybody who composts breaking a law?
No.
No, that's
Best thing to do.
that's not considered disposal.
That's again, like I say, this is so poorly
For
written.
definitions, you know, we're working with the definitions of the state.
Well, then this needs to be much clearer. I would really strongly, first of all, I would suggest that you not vote for this, period. But second of all, until it's clearer and until all residents are,
Ordinance, you understand that, right?
Voting tonight, this is to have discussion.
This is not an
when the vote
ordinance.
is held,
This is facts that we got from discussions with the DEP to clear up some of the questions that came up. The ordinance is not here because it's not up for discussion yet. It will be changed from what we had before, but probably not that much.
well, I suggest that when it comes up that you vote against it based on any number of reasons that you're hearing tonight. But again, something that's clearer, specifically saying what's changing. If apparently we're already all breaking the
Nothing
law.
is, that is correct.
He just said that we're changing the current law.
We'll give
No.
you a red line version of current township ordinance with the changes that are being proposed.
That would make a lot of sense.
But it is correct that we have already been doing things that are illegal in this township. That is true.
So anybody
This ordinance is not changing the fact that we were doing things we were not supposed to be doing.
So anybody who has a burn pile, which again, I won't ask for a show of hands, but I'll bet at least a third of people in this room have had a burn pile, have burned their yard waste. So we're breaking the law when we do that.
Unless it's for one of the exceptions, yes.
We're
And the
not adding
exceptions
any.
were incinerators and stuff and cooking.
Right,
We're not talking about cooking. We're talking about
burn pile.
a burn pile. That's
And I think the state.
hot dog and it's.
Right, it makes it okay.
I think the state encourages you to compost as opposed to burn.
so two more questions. One is, what's the penalty for the law? Do we need to self-report for all the times we've done it in the past and broken the law? But that's facetious. But going forward, if someone dimes us out or the township police drive by and see it, hopefully they would have the sense not to come out and talk to the person because this is so silly. But if someone is caught and turned in, what is the penalty?
They put you on a stake and put you right in the middle.
And I don't think that, I think what you're gonna find is, you know, like this other woman who got up, you know, if they have a fear for something is a danger, or that's when you're gonna have somebody reporting. Now, I hope no one's gonna go out there with a tape measure and say, you're 3.5 feet.
Well,
To answer your question, it's a criminal process to the district justice, a summary fine of $100 not to exceed $1,000. That's the possible penalty.
Can't hear you.
Possible penalty for a criminal citation under the ordinance would be $100 to $1,000.
everybody hear that? All right, so,
It's not, we're enforcing that. That is.
Right.
It's enforced.
right. Well, whatever. I mean, we don't care who's making us pay $100 to $1,000. Last question is, so you're saying that we have to have this law, but we also don't, right? We don't have to be in compliance. What happens if we're not in compliance, which apparently we haven't been for some time now?
Well, we're not in compliance with the requirements of the state and therefore.
We can't hear you, Dave. Could you move the mic closer?
That's really far back.
Sorry. We wouldn't be, the township would not be in compliance with state regulations and therefore the township would forfeit any grant monies available to it.
And last time there was reference to a $14,000 grant. Is that the grant that we would be losing out on?
And that was a rough amount that was proposed to me by a consultant who was trying to help us with that. And that's where we even discovered that, hey, we weren't paying any attention to this. Now, the fact that we just found it out doesn't change anything. It just changed the fact that we were getting no money and we could be getting money. And if we're able to get that money, then we can look at utilizing that money to work on some type of a composting scenario for the whole township where we can help have somewhere for you to bring the wood. And that's, you know, Tommy could talk more about that, about options that we could have. But if we were to get that money, we would use it for good, certainly, to help with this problem, because we do have a problem. But we could just,
What's the problem?
but people who have many ash trees and piling up all over their yards, and they're not comfortable with just throwing them in a big pile. So that's a whole nother problem we need to solve. But that money could be utilized for that. Regardless of whether we get the money or don't get the money, we're still not in compliance with the law. So I have a problem with that.
Well, I
It's
don't,
not about the money.
okay, well,
Not about the
that's
money.
important to say, because what I was hearing from people was, really, for $14,000?
Yeah, well, that was a interpretation. George asked me a question of what would it, what it would be, and I told him that was what I had heard. No one ever said we are doing this because we need to get $14,000. Believe me, this is not worth $14,000 worth of trouble. It's not worth $24,000 worth of trouble. It's a law that we're not in compliance with, and it has been pointed out to us, and we can't unsee it anymore.
Well, again, I'm still not hearing much in terms of what happens if we're not in compliance, besides not being eligible for grants. To me, if that's the only downside.
Be further grant issues, right?
I think you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, Jamie. We're in the business of creating laws and enforcing laws. And I think local governments walk down a really dark road when they pick and choose which state and county laws they want to follow or not. I think the rule of law is important.
So
I understand you might disagree with the state law and the county law and wish there were more allowances. But truth be told, we can't enact or modify state law, county law. So maybe this is a conversation you have with a state rep or a county commissioner.
well, I get your point, and I'm going to say something that will surprise some people. As a proud Democrat, this is a perfect example of what's wrong with our government, telling people how to live their lives, which Democrats are frequently blamed for, and Republicans should be, because they're always trying to intrude themselves into our personal decisions too. But this is a thing where we're being told to be compliant with a law that makes no sense. And this is what gets people worked up about infringing on our personal rights. And to me, so you're saying your belief is that we should do what big government, state big government, tells us to do. And I'm saying we should do what's best for the residents, the people that live here, not to please Harrisburg, but to please us.
George Salchinos. So I think what we're looking at here a little bit is, the township values open space, large properties, the rural nature of the township. And this is something that comes with it. There's a lot of trees. I'm not talking about yard waste leaves necessarily, but there's a lot of branches, trees that build up, and I understand there's farming exceptions and so forth to the burn ban, but somebody that has a 1 acre property, it's unreasonable to expect them to stack a pile of dead ash trees and just leave them there for 15 years waiting for them to compost. It's also unreasonable to expect them to pay to have tractor trailers truck an entire tree to some remote site to have it composted. I mean, burning has been done here forever. Well, not forever, but hundreds of years. And I think you need to find a way, as someone mentioned, we're partly suburban, partly rural, but you need to do something. In your decision, you need to, or your deliberations, you need to think about how it affects the majority of residents that have larger properties. I think if you look at, you know, a map of West Vincent, you see a lot of sparse areas. And you know, it's something where burning could happen without an issue and has for years. You know, people that have burn piles and burn usually are very aware of the weather and the moisture content of the field surrounding them. And I think it's just something that people have been accustomed to doing here. And I don't know. I also sort of echo what Jamie said. I think we need to think about what is the penalty. You need to tell us what's the penalty if we don't have this ordinance, which.
Did, right? Did you hear the penalty? Would you like to read that again?
No, that's a personal penalty. What's the penalty to the township if we don't have this ordinance?
Well, generally speaking, we're not able to take advantage of state grants when it comes to recycling monies.
Okay.
What it is, I don't know.
There are other things that it might preclude us from getting to.
But that's might. I mean, I think if we're passing something because we might get something, I think that's a poor reason right now. If you can.
Yeah, so there are two grant programs under Act 101. One is what's called the performance grant, where your waste haulers report to you the recyclables that are collected each year. Recyclables include yard waste. So the 5 licensed haulers we have send us a report, all the numbers. We submit it to DEP and they cut up that money and distribute it across the state. There's another program called the 904 grant. And that is available to all compliant municipalities, and you can use that to buy equipment. And it's a very generous program. It's either 80 or 90% of the purchase price of equipment. In the last municipality in which I worked wrote a grant successfully for a loader for their compost site that was north of $200,000.
And that grant, is that grant a per capita based grant?
No, it isn't. It isn't.
So what is the qualifying process?
You have to be Act 101 compliant.
And then what?
So you wouldn't get your annual allocation under 902, and you'd be ineligible for competing for a grant under 904.
Competing for a grant. So
Yeah,
you say compete, what would,
submit a grant application?
but when you say compete, that means it's not an automatic choice. There only some townships would get it if they applied.
But the state is very good about seeing to a fair distribution of those across the region.
Be nice to see some per capita numbers, maybe.
It's common practice to submit a 904 grant application every year, understanding you're not going to get it every year, but maybe every 2-3 years you get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
they're pretty good about spreading that benefit to all municipalities.
So if you're looking over a few years, I mean, I'm thinking per capita, what's this worth? I mean, we have a $4.5 million revenue stream annually, something like that. And if we're looking at, you know, $10 a person in the township, we need to kind of think about whether it was worth it or not.
Well, keep in mind though, you know, regardless of your politics or how you feel about voting or not voting for this, it does not change that you still weren't supposed to do it. If we decide to follow the law and put this ordinance in place where it was supposed to be, because we are remiss, it won't change whether you are allowed to do it or not. You're still not allowed to do it. You can still get fined by the DEP, by the state. So not our decision. We're
So you're saying enforcement won't change at all by passing this?
We're not going to be asking our police officers or zoning officers or firemen to go around and see if anybody's burning anything. Now, you're still going to do the same thing. You're going to be responsible when you do decide to have some ceremonial burning or whatever, and you're going to call the fire company, and
But
that doesn't change.
as I understand it now,
who's upset, then he might have.
You have a large tree come down, a pile of brush, you can legally burn it now following a process, correct?
Say that again.
You have a large tree come down. I mean, you're talking, I mean, a 50-year-old tree will make quite a pile of brush to burn. if I follow a process now, it can be burned, correct?
What process? The current ordinance?
Yeah,
No, not what we're proposing, no.
we're not,
Not the ordinance as it's rewritten.
so so what Jamie said is true, as it's written now, everybody that's burning
It's just not.
brush in their yard has there's no legal way to do that. Except for maybe a farming exception.
Yeah. We're just, I just don't think everybody understands. We're not making this up to make it hard for anybody. You weren't supposed to do it before. Just because you are, doesn't mean you were supposed to do it. It's not going to change the fact whether or not this ordinance is in place. The only fact that will change is that we'll be able to utilize some DEP opportunities that are out there in the future. Either way, the fines and the penalties will be the same.
Okay, well, I still also,
Enforced, which we're currently not enforcing. I shouldn't be saying that, but we're not.
I still think for somebody that has a large tree to remove from their property, to haul it out in tractor trailers to a compost site is a lot poorer use of resources than burning it. I mean, you're going to pay diesel fuel to haul it to a compost site.
So where can we go to collectively tell our state representatives that we are not happy with this? It's not here.
You can pass a resolution. You do that all the time. Seriously. Township of West Vincent proclaims that they're not happy with the way this works. I mean, there is a way. The township has done it before.
Every one of you can send, letters and make phone calls. See if you can get it changed. We'll be happy to.
All right, hold off on the orders to see if we're successful.
Hey there, Julia Brendel. So I just have two things. One is, I think, Tommy, the word that you used to the 3 foot in diameter was a recommendation by the DEP. Is that correct? What if you say, okay, well, thank you for recommending that, but we would like to have a 6 foot in diameter circle? What happens there?
But they'll have the final say.
I had asked for a 5 foot and we came back with 3.
So whatever ordinance the board were to adopt, that goes to DEP. So you want to be sure that it meets with DEP's approval before you adopt the ordinance.
Okay.
You shouldn't go through all of this and send the ordinance to DEP and they'll say, you're still not compliant with 101. We disagree with this, and this.
Okay. So my other question is, what is let's go way back in time to when they first put these ordinances together. Do we know what the motivating factor was behind this? Because it sounds like if it's tied to recycling, they just want more stuff. They don't want us to burn our stuff. They want us to send them their stuff or send them our stuff. And it's all tied to the same thing.
It's clean air.
It is.
Oh, okay. Then why don't they call it that? Why do they call it? Why is it tied to recycling and not clean air?
It is recycling and it is clean air. Under 101, yard waste is considered recyclable material, and you don't want to burn that for clean air. The conventional recyclables under 101, the tin cans, the glass, the aluminum,
Right.
that was for reuse and to save space at landfills.
Right. Well, that's also trash. You don't burn that. That's trash. But if you're burning your yard waste, that
Do burn that.
Yeah, but under
they shouldn't be doing that.
Under 101, recyclables includes cans, glass, paper, and yard waste. Yeah. And it was done under that environmental umbrella.
Right. So
that was in the late 80s.
Right. So it's clean air is what we're talking about. Really, that's the beginning, the catalyst to an ordinance like this is all a clean air thing.
And they wanted to keep whatever didn't have to go to a landfill out of a landfill.
Right. Well, that's why we burn it in our yards. I mean, that's simple.
Part to this too is, the requirements of our haulers, which we need to follow up on too, because they should be taking this material, I mean, or go to Donna, or there's some others that fight for leaves and such, they want to take them from you. But your haulers should be taking your yard waste.
So is that going to increase how much we're going to have to pay for?
It's, by law, they're supposed to do, am I getting that correct? Yes?
Where are they going to get it from? They're going to drive down the driveway and pick it up? I mean, there's nowhere, could we leave it in the street? I mean, I know like in New Jersey, they leave it in the street and then it sits there for like 4 or 5 months and then finally they come by and pick it up. Because that's how it was at my son when he went to college in New Jersey. Big piles of stuff in the street.
It's great, they take anything that you leave, as long as it's just the yard waste. So, and that's what the haulers are supposed to be doing now. The fact that maybe we've not been pushing them to do that could be an issue, but you know, I think you've been having conversations, Tommy, with a lot of our haulers and getting them registered and trying to get them to understand that they need to, you know, follow these guidelines for us.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's more to it than just this, you know, we have to look at options for composting, you know, ways to get rid of the material as well, because we're clearly not doing enough right now for our residents' needs to be able to be in compliance.
Well, I think the residents are fine. I think the residents' needs are met by taking care of it themselves.
That doesn't make it lawful.
Okay, well, our current ordinance, the West Vincent Township current ordinance, says that you can burn yard waste. So just in case there's confusion, obviously there's a state law, but our current ordinance says that you can.
We don't have a burn.
Yeah, we do.
We have, that's in the fire ordinance, right?
No, there's back in, I think it was from like 1992. The last ordinance, or in the code, the last thing that was written about burning, I believe, was 1992, and it says that you can burn.
It's not a specific burning ordinance. It's part of another area.
Well, it still says you can do it. Okay. All right. And I will be starting in church.
Rachel McKay.
Just a marshmallow.
Rachel McKay, Phillips Lane. Ceremonial burning bonfire, what is the definition of that? Can I have a 4th of July bonfire ceremony and have a 6x6 fire and tell the fire department I'm having a 4th of July celebration? Is that?
Well, I think 6x6 might be it. That's where I'm questioning.
It depends on the size, but open recreational fire possessing fuel area, that's to be determined. For ceremonial cooking, warmth, and similar purposes. You can interpret it how you want, ceremonial.
So ceremonial, it's whatever I decide.
We have to invite some friends.
Well,
Yeah, you're invited. Bring some marshmallows.
But, and I think that might be part of it too. Like, I'm just thinking that, you know, if it's a ceremonial burn, that you have people there till it's out. That's
So they just want
safety. as
people
well.
there and obviously a hose and monitoring
You're
and
calling the fire company.
tell the fire department just in case a spark goes on somebody's cedar roof. Okay.
My name is Jennifer Marquez at 2316 Conestoga. I have a couple questions about built-up brush. Don't you think that that would encourage a lot of built-up brush to be on people's properties and causing fire hazards for huge fires in case we come across another drought? Don't you think?
I've had a burn pile for 12 years.
Yeah. Wait, so you have a
How's it-
burn pile?
I have a burn pile.
Okay.
I've never burned. Goes down and I fill it back up and it goes down.
So that's a compost pile.
You can call it what you want, but it's all burnable material.
But a lot of
And
times,
lots of what people would consider bonfire material, and it will decompose over time.
yes, but like a lot of people, like a lot of like leaves and things that are built up in the woods, a lot of times those do need to be pulled out and burned and cleared to prevent larger fires. Would you not agree?
Why would you pull leaves out of a forest?
I'm just that, like, I feel like that there's a lot of like built up brush and things. And if you don't burn it, a lot of these properties are larger and could lead to greater fires if they are not burned. Like in California, that's how those fires got so huge. But I also want clarification on when you say that it's a law, are you just, is it just compliance of a grant? Or is it
No,
law?
that's been answered previously. Has
Yes.
nothing to do with the grant. We've been out of compliance with the law.
But I would like
And
to,
there are penalties for us being out of compliance with the law.
The grant's a bonus for actually complying with the law.
and when you say that, I do know other townships that have burn bans and their litter, their yard litter is picked up, but they're not allowed to include weeds. They have to sort out the weeds. Would that be an issue here as well?
I guess that has to do with your hauler. Your
Okay.
haulers, like, I don't know if they allow weeds or not. And compost piles, you're not supposed to have weed seeds. That's just a preferred method of composting.
But like if we had to put our trash out, would like, I know that other townships do have to sort out their weeds. We might have to do that.
Yeah, I never heard that either. I always let my weeds die before I do anything with them. I pull them out, I let them sit on the driveway and die,
Okay.
and I gather them up, but.
It wouldn't be a township requirement, it would be a hauler.
But if we, as a township, required that they be put out, hauler could. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I always sort out my weed too by pulling out all the stems and the seeds. So something new just happened here. Someone asked if there's a penalty for not doing this. You said it's been answered 3 times, but you gave a different answer this time, Bernie. You said there are penalties. Now, there's a difference between, so define what you mean by penalties, because you could be charged for a penalty, or the penalty could be that you can't get grants. So I think you just need to make sure what you mean. We need to make sure what you mean by penalties.
So what I'm trying to say is that as a township, if we're not in compliance with DEP, there are potential ramifications for that. And one of them would be not having it or letting people just burn as they wish.
Okay, but penalties, I think sounds like we would get a fine, or as a township, we would have to pay something. You meant more ramifications than penalties per se. I mean, it's semantics,
Okay.
but
You
yeah.
get a penalty as an individual.
Right.
regardless of whether or not.
Right, but the questions we've been asking have been about the town, like what the question is always, what's the downside if we don't do this? And what I'm hearing is we wouldn't be able to get grants that amount to $10 or $20 a resident.
That's the given, that's given, but there's also then the opportunities like Tommy was saying, there might be a vehicle that we could get 80% of the money for, but we're no longer eligible for it, so.
Okay. And just another clarification, last time this came up, I asked if this were passed today, if I burned that pile yesterday, it would have been legal. And if I burned it tomorrow, it would be illegal. And you said that's correct, but that's in
No,
fact
we're
not,
wrong.
that
We
is
didn't
incorrect.
realize at that point that how much we had to do this. So, we've learned more that it's more dire than we thought, that it is
So-
already in place regardless of where we pass the ordinance. The ordinance puts us in compliance.
Right.
with What.
We get
the
that.
law tells us to do.
So I'm just curious if you could sort of stand out of your office, your governmental position for a moment. I think a lot of what our elected supervisors have done over the years since I've been coming to these meetings is do what they sort of feel they have to do as government officials. Like, to me, everything that you're talking about here, you're doing because Harrisburg said you have to. I just wonder, as residents, would you be in favor of this? Is there I can't think of really of any reason any resident would be in favor of this bill. I just wonder if you, as residents.
I'm not going to say where this is, but I know of someone who burns plastics, who burns household furniture. In particular, a sofa and a chair, which are just filled with carcinogens. Do you want to live next door to somebody like that? Or as municipal authority, let's say, do we want to protect the people that live next door? So this is about clean air.
Well, I'll answer your question, but you answer mine first. You answer mine first, and I'll answer yours. As residents, is there anything appealing about this at all to you?
I'd love to let you burn all day long. I think it's fun to go to bonfires. That's cool. I love that, but it's not safe. It's not good for the environment, and it's not allowed by the, I tend to follow the law.
Well,
But you asked me if I like
burning. Sure, I would love you all to be happy and do everything that you want to do. That's just not how the law works.
Okay, so lastly, just again, so before next meeting, we'll see the redlined version of the before and after. That'll be on the meeting or on the township
If
website.
it's on the agenda again, yeah.
I'm not sure when it's on the
It
agenda.
won't be later this.
Okay,
Before it's on the agenda.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Donna Delaney, Beaver Hill Road. First, I would like to thank our supervisors and our manager and our solicitor for inviting public comment. I mean, they could just make laws and ordinances and do whatever they thought was right, but they're trying to be part of a representative democracy, and they're inviting all of us to come and talk. And and I was hoping to not say anything tonight, but it seems, and everyone's going to hate me, but whatever. It seems like people who came out about this came out because they really love to burn and they don't want that right taken away, even though it turns out it's not actually a right at this time. And I have a relatively large property, and it would never occur to me to burn anything. And I'm chair of the Environmental Advisory Council, and we teach everyone to keep their leaves and keep their brush. And I realize there's certain properties that doesn't work on. But to answer Jamie's question, as a resident of West Vincent, I would be thrilled to have cleaner air, to have less smoke, to not be terrified when my neighbor is burning his leaves that his woods is going to go on fire and it's going to spread to my home. That one woman came up and said, I'm really frightened. And I have also been frightened. I've been really frightened when I come out, it's dry and I smell smoke. And anyway, I think there's a lot of people, thousands, who didn't come tonight because they weren't, their energy wasn't brought up by, oh no, a burn ban. And a lot of those people would be happy to have clean air and to compost and to not be fearful that their house is going to burn down. And I do applaud. I know that you guys have started to take action and look into how as a community we can compost. Anybody who doesn't know, East Pikeland has a fabulous composting program. They have a facility, and residents can bring their yard waste, and then in the spring they get free mulch and free compost. So that is a very successful program in East Pikeland, and it's costly, but they have a lot of retail. They have the money to do it, and we can't do that here because we don't have that kind of funding. But looking for solutions for people is also wonderful, and I thank you for that.
King Graver, Green Lane. As I read this, the township is in one of the designated air basins. Is that defined by DEP?
Yes.
No, it's federal or state.
It's state law, and there's a map that designates the basin.
And who designates that?
State does.
Did you just say something about the federal?
No, it's not federal law. The state determines the air bases.
Does anybody know what that is? What an air basin is?
Yes, it's a geographic area within the state where air quality is of a concern. So they're clustered around Southwest Pennsylvania, Southeast Pennsylvania, Harrisburg. So
that the state is saying we're in an air basin and we can't do this and we can't do that, and you must do this and must do that.
Yeah, there's a map.
I got that picture. Okay, thank you.
One more comment based on discussion. I don't think anyone in this room is talking about burning sofas.
It happens.
It happens.
It happens, but I don't think you can burn a sofa under the current ordinance, and you can't burn it under the.
Plastics. What about plastics in your?
I don't think anyone here is talking about burning plastics.
But Yeah, maybe not, but I'm just bringing up the point. If you just didn't have any.
But there's nothing in this ordinance that's relevant to plastics, is there? Or the old one, you couldn't burn them before, you can't burn them now.
And you couldn't burn yard waste before, and you can't now. It hasn't really.
Well, I don't know, someone said that,
Our ordinance cannot supersede the state's ordinance, so
okay, well, anyway, I think,
whether it said that or not, you.
I think it's a red herring to say people are here because they want to burn sofas and
No.
plastics. They aren't.
That's the extreme. I agree. It is an extreme. However, what about all those in between?
Can I?
You don't need to burn. No one really needs to burn. That's the point.
Can I just say that we had this
People don't
ordinance,
need to do, but.
we had this ordinance on the table, we could have just passed it. But, we thought it was something came to us that we're supposed to do, we could have just passed it. We didn't. Why didn't we do that? Because we thought there was concerns and we wanted to look into it further. And we wanted to get to the facts and we wanted to give everybody an opportunity to talk about it. So that's why we're here. They were not trying to shove this down anybody's throat. This is just something that's supposed to be done. And we're trying to see the best way, the most palatable way that could work for our residents.
Okay, and I think it,
Appreciate y'all for coming out here and being part of the solution.
and I think when we talk about having haulers haul waste, I think we need to think about and I don't think it's an extreme case, they're not going to take branches that are bigger than their truck, for example.
Well,
Right, that's not going to be a solution.
typically, they have to be cut up.
They have to be cut up.
One branch is cut up and tied.
And what about stumps, for example? You go down.
Not stumps, but mostly branches.
So, I mean, it's not a full solution. It's a partial solution. And probably not one that covers a lot of what people here burn. There's large trees. Well, I mean, a branch, I'm not talking about prunings off of shrubs around the house. You'll see branches as long as the tables here that drop out of ash trees. And that doesn't really have a solution in what we're proposing. Well, there is a solution. Somebody can cut them up and carry them and put them in piles and whatever. What's that?
Rent and chipper. I mean, there's solutions out there.
Well, and
Yeah.
I'd love to see if we could come up with some way to help people get these things done. And that's what we're talking about with municipal solutions. So
Be happy to hear it.
thank you.
Thanks.
But are there any more comments on this? We're going to be here all night, but if there's something new, I would love to have you come on up.
Mark Schaefer with Conestoga Road. I've been a resident for over 20 years and I've never knew I was breaking the law. Every time I do a yard burn for the yard waste and branches, I would just simply call the Chester County Dispatch, told them that I was going to do a controlled burn. They wanted to know my name, address, information, let us know when it's out. And it was just really easy. Last year during the drought, there was a ban and they said, no, sorry, you can't burn. So we didn't burn. We just followed what was happening. We know how bad the drought was. Bernie, I agree with you 100%. When it comes to plastic, I mean, there's such a distinct smell in the air that it's like an instant headache. So I'm totally on board with that. And I thought maybe is there some solution where I have a cedar shake roof. And so I know somebody had commented about that. They're concerned about that. I have a huge compost pile. So I'm doing that. But I also have a pit that's a burn area. And with everything coming down on these storms and just every daily, you just need to, I can cut up what I can cut up and burn what I can burn in my fireplace. But, and that's allowed for now. But the head branches and things like that, and I fold them, they're like responsible. I couldn't be any more responsible. And so this is a total surprise when I heard it a few months ago about it possibly not having the luxury. It would create a hardship not being able to do it. I still have tree people come in. I still have chippers come in. That's costly. But sometimes when these straight winds come through, you have to call in the big guns. But for the small stuff, I think residents responsibly can manage it. If there's some hybrid that we could do, like enforce the plastic situation, when that happens, I mean, I'm all on board for that. It's nasty. And you think about, chemicals getting right into some problems. I agree with you. But, I think I've been doing it perfectly all this time. and now we might lose this right. And, you know, maybe everybody didn't show up or a lot of people didn't show up. I just happened to read it because I saw it in an email to be here tonight. But I'm sure this is the most crowded I've seen it in a long time. So, but we do appreciate you coming out and putting this out here before us. I mean, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so my question that I still have is, you know, what's going to change when we put this ordinance in and he calls, you know, our fire marshal to say that he's going to do a burn? Is, you know, what's going to change? Is, I mean, are you going to report him now or something? I don't like, other than someone calling on a neighbor and saying this is an issue, I think the fire company's still going to handle it the way they've been handling it. Would they? I don't know. Would they change that? That's the question. Are we asking them to change
I've
anything?
always allowed the fire marshal to have the discretion.
Right.
Where he enforces building laws.
Yeah, we do. We really do have to.
The fire chief has the discretion to break the law.
No.
To decide what's okay and what's not okay.
That was my fire marshal or whoever. Oh, God bless you for following the rules so well. I thought to do that in the future.
We
too.
can't have it both ways. You can't want us to not do it and then want us to enforce it.
I'm just saying, if you're calling the fire marshal or whoever and saying, I'm about to break the law, is that okay with you? And they say, yeah, just let us know when you're finished breaking the law. Just an observation.
Well, it's really not what he meant. Okay.
Because it
Well,
could be a
tell me
lawful
how I'm
burn.
wrong.
It could be, you know, they decide what's a lawful burn, I
No,
don't see
apparently
anything
Harrisburg
changing.
does.
but they're the enforcers.
All right, so more.
The township is not doing anything to change the enforcement. We're just putting a law in the books
I
that we're told we have to
And
have.
you know what, in the end, like you say, not much is changing. It's just frustrating, you know.
Me too.
Okay,
Thank you.
nice to hear. I'm not, but again, I'm just looking at this more, and again, whether it's Harrisburg or the summary, the first bullet point under state law, Act 97 does not allow waste, including leaf or yard waste, to be processed or disposed without a permit. Now, we've agreed that disposed can mean a lot of different things, but it goes against what you were saying earlier about our garbage collectors have to, if we dispose of it with them, they have to collect it. So we're not allowed to dispose it, but they have to collect it if we dispose it. And then
The haulers have a license from DEP.
well,
They
So they're allowed to
are
burn it.
licensed to process yard.
so what does it mean when it says we're not allowed to dispose of it?
Same thing. Collect it, process it, let's say at a compost site, or dispose of it in an incinerator. So the haulers in the township, and there are 5 registered haulers right now, they're all licensed by DEP to collect yard waste.
The Solid Waste Management Act does not allow waste to be processed or disposed without a permit.
Yes,
So how would we dispose of something without a permit?
you can't.
We give it to our haulers and they can dispose of it. Maybe they're burning it.
A municipality has to either collect the refuse and recyclable itself, or allow folks to contract with a private hauler. We choose that option.
And
If you're going to, and I've operated 3 compost sites, if you're going to operate a compost site in the municipality, that has to be approved by DEP. We just can't start one. DEP gives us a permit for the compost site.
So just clarify, are we allowed to compost? Which.
Oh, yes.
Backyard compost.
So we don't think of that as disposing.
No, DEP encourages on-site for residential properties composting.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not ignoring Donna's points. I mean, it's, and Bernie's too. Like, you're right. There's no need. I've got a pile that I add to every year. One pile is just, it diminishes every year. I'm always surprised it builds up and then it comes back down again. There is another pile that I have is for birth. And you're right. I mean, in the end, we don't have to. People are persnickety about their properties and their laws, which, you know, they have every right to be. And not that much is going to change. It just, the whole thing just doesn't feel right.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we should move on. I think we exhausted that argument and we'll be happy to hear if you think of something else, please let us know. let's move on to the solar and electric vehicle ordinance provisions. And again, this is something that is being brought to us by our clean energy transition team. And we're going to listen to what they have to say. So Kirk Reinbold is going to speak to us on that.
Hello, Kirk Reinbold, Bertrand Road. So what we've been doing is we've been working with a group of engineers for free. We're part of a shared energy management program, and they help us with energy efficiency ordinances and things like that. On their dime, it's funded by the DEP. And one thing that they are looking at are potential ordinances for solar, EV, and things of that sort, as well as others. So one thing that we had them look at was there's actually 3 different potential ordinances that they are proposing. And there's some make-ready ordinances for solar and EV. But there's another ordinance for just what they call principal solar energy systems. So if you're a homeowner and you want to put solar on your house or in your yard, the problem we have with our saldo is that it's about a half page what you're allowed to do with solar in our township. And for wind turbines, and they even say windmills, that's like 4 or 5 pages. So it's very old, and so we need to clean that up a bit. And the whole goal here is to reduce the barriers so the people that want to put solar on their property, it makes it easier for them. And it also limits large landowners and big properties, 10s, 20 acres, for putting huge solar arrays in our township. So we're looking at both of those. So they put together a memo for us, and that was in the notes. So the hope is that we can figure out how we're going to take a look at that. And then there's these make-ready ordinances. And the whole point of these are, if you're going to be doing a new building or major renovation, how do we plan for solar for the roof or on your property or an electric vehicle in the garage in the future? So these are what we call make-ready ordinances. So the whole idea, and it's pretty simple, is, if you want to have a EV ready or an EV ready ordinance for your garage, basically, as you build it, you just run the conduit. Very simple. And when you plan the electric panel, you size it appropriately. You don't have to add an additional, 50 amps, 100 amps down the road. And the same with putting solar on your roof. You basically run conduit as you build the building. So what we're going to look at for that is, can we run the conduit for both of those as we build the building? And we don't know exactly how we would do that. So we'd have to work with these engineers as well as our building inspectors and folks like that. So those are the 3 different solar ordinances that we're kind of proposing. And these reduce the high retrofit costs. So if you were to buy a house that doesn't have this and you want to put, EV charger in your garage or solar on your roof, you'd have to pay a substantial amount of money. In addition, But the whole idea here is for new construction or major renovations, this would already be available. So that's kind of it. So hopefully we can work with the board, maybe the planning commission, and work through what might make sense.
So can I just ask, is
Yeah.
this saying that it's a requirement of a builder to have that infrastructure, or they have to offer it? Is that, what is the general consensus of where you're going with that?
I think
More
it would
market
basically be, if it's an ordinance, it would probably be a requirement, for new construction.
They have to have that infrastructure.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Is that, pass muster?
Well, I was just wondering, I guess it all depends on how you think you could do it. I know we talked about amendments to the construction code. I mean, we adopted uniform construction code, but there's ways to have exceptions to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether you do it through that, where it deals with those issues and how you put that into the construction code that applies to this township, that would have the conduit in the garage and on the roof or whatever needs to be done.
How do we figure that out?
Well, someone with expertise, not a lawyer, someone with expertise in that kind of building would have to come up with the regulations, the rules that we can then adopt, put into
Yeah.
the ordinance.
Yeah.
But
I mean, this is not new and novel. I mean, it's been done before. So we have a bunch of examples that we can share.
I mean, I would think that a builder coming in to do a major subdivision would have, they would know what the market wants and would be doing things to give the market what they want. But as far as if you're doing a renovation on your home and don't have any interest in doing solar panels, you're not saying that you have to then put that in.
No,
You have to put it in
no,
your own property.
no.
no.
I'm not saying that. I mean, if you're putting in, and that's all up to how we want to put this together.
Right.
But I mean, if you're going to put in, let's say you didn't have a garage and then you're going to put in a detached garage, that would be it.
Reminding people that this is the good time to do it.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's more along the lines of education
yeah,
and breaking down the barriers. So that
exactly.
in a homeowner's situation where they don't allow solar, trying to work with that up front to say, you should allow this.
Yeah, yeah.
But you're not mandating you have to do it.
No, I'm not mandating
Okay.
anyone has to do it. I mean, just new construction or like a major renovation. We need to figure out what we mean by major renovation.
Mm-hmm.
So.
You suggesting they do it, or you're saying that they need to pass, you want them to pass a code to make them do it?
Yeah, you should. Did you want to come up and speak?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Oh, I'm sorry. You were next. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Jen.
Julia Brendel again. So I do have a couple of questions. So I'm pretty sure, and I remember we had this discussion a few years ago when we talked about being whatever we're calling this ready. And I know that we talked about Weatherstone and we talked about how there's no EV car chargers there and there's all these people that live there and they have no place to charge their car. And I thought we already passed something that said in new construction, you had to install the conduit and make sure that you had I feel like we talked about this a few years ago. I know we talked about it a few years ago, and it came up at the same time as when you passed whatever it's called, this clean, whatever the thing is, where we're not going to be able to use any fossil fuels by a certain point in time. And all of our vehicles have to be renewable energy, which it talks about on page 3 of this memo that you wrote. So obviously, yes, my first question is, what is a major renovation? Where's the threshold? Who makes that determination? Because that's going to be huge. I don't honestly, in new construction, I think that a lot of builders, and Craig can speak to this, I think a lot of them are trying to get with the newer stuff, get with the, you know, hey, we're doing geothermal if we can afford to do it. We're definitely putting in solar. We have solar at our house. We burn things, but we have solar. You know, we burn wood. We heat our house with wood. And my question back then was, are we going to have to get a new system because we're heating our house with wood? Now, obviously, we know now that wood in West Vincent Township is abundant and renewable. So does that mean wood's renewable energy?
It's always been a renewable energy.
Okay. So then, but the question is with any, and I remember we had this discussion, somebody came up behind me. If you have geothermal is great, but you need a backup of something, and that's usually propane or natural gas or oil. It cannot heat your house when it gets to a certain temperature outside. The geothermal cannot heat your house to a comfortable living level when it's 10 degrees outside. You need that backup of something. So I don't think that there's any.
Geothermal put in.
We don't have geothermal. I just know because I'm a real estate agent from selling houses with geothermal that that's a thing.
Same thing about heat pumps, geothermal, but heat pumps,
Geothermal is a heat pump, though. You use a heat pump when you do geothermal. Yeah.
but the advances in them are like in computers.
Right. So we have to get new geothermal systems now.
Well,
Okay.
if you're gonna do a new install, really think about the equipment that you're gonna install. Because Norway, Sweden, Finland, a lot of northern countries can use heat pumps. So why can't we? It's because we don't think about it. We just go for what the installer suggests.
Well, I think a lot of people use heat pumps now, and typically the price to heat, it costs a lot of money to use just an electric heat pump. That's usually not a very inexpensive way to heat your house. So I think that's why people don't like to do it. They want to use a fossil fuel because it ends up being less expensive.
Not if you have a solar panel.
Right. Well, not entirely. But anyway, so there's a couple of my questions. I do have one question for you, Kurt. And when you first got up here, you said that we are looking at putting a solar array in our township somewhere. Is that what you said when you first got up here? I thought you said that you were looking at adding. Oh, you're trying to avoid that?
Okay, prevent it.
Prevent us from doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Based upon East Pikeland.
There's a lot of solar farms out there.
Was concerned about big properties putting in just 10, 20, 30 acres of solar.
Yeah, I don't think we would allow that to happen here.
Well, we don't have an ordinance
But we don't
against
have an
it.
ordinance about it.
Okay, well then you definitely need to pass that. Put it in, do what they do, like put it above the parking in Weatherstone or something like that, but you don't cover grass with solar panels.
Plus there's a field that's like surrounded by trees and no one will even see it.
Everybody sees it.
Any sun.
They don't want to, right, they don't want to have any sun. What good solar there? And everybody sees it. Bernie's going to see it when he goes out for a walk. That's not what he wants to do, is come across a solar farm in the middle of the and maybe a pot farm. Anyway.
All right.
Okay. So no, those were basically I understand, but I thought we actually talked about this a few years ago, right about the same time as you got our grant for our EV car charger that's still out of order out there. So I'm pretty sure it was right around the same time. Are we fixing that? Okay, well, it's a really nice parking spot. Thank you.
Thank you. You just don't want to know.
Hi, Craig Kirkowska. I guess I wanted to get the clarification. Are you asking the board to pass an ordinance that it's required for homeowners building, say, a garage? Because if you did a second story on a house, you wouldn't need it. But building a garage or a new development going in, are you asking the board to require them for an ordinance that they have to do the setup for the electrical vehicle and the solar panels? Is that what you're asking or no?
I'm asking. Well, the question is, is that a major renovation? I mean, it's not.
Well, you would, even if you did a major renovation and put a second story on a house, you wouldn't put an electrical car charger in the second floor. You would put, it would be, okay, if somebody puts on a 2-car, 1-car garage, now that's a major renovation that would maybe require or consider an electrical charger. So I guess the question is, are you asking the board to make that an ordinance that if you build a garage or you build a new home, you have to put that in? You know what I mean, or no?
The board to consider what the boundaries are. Because I don't know exactly what those are just yet. But I mean, basically out there in different townships in different states, these types of EV ready, solar ready ordinances are out there. But it depends on what we want to do here.
We could definitely be breaking down some
Yeah,
barriers
yeah.
in some cases where people want to
makes sense
put
for
these
us.
things
We don't
in
know.
and they're not allowed by their
Right.
homeowners. I
Because
see
most
that. Yeah.
builders would, if you're building a new development, you're gonna have that on your spreadsheet of this, you could do this for this amount of dollars. Because people are into the electric vehicle, and that's, you know, some people want it, some people don't. I don't, but that doesn't mean anything. But that's all I was just.
So I think you're
asking.
recommending that we give this to the planning commission to talk about what they think should be the future of developments here. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it's hard to add that because Pennsylvania went with a unified state law about 12 years ago. So when you do those ordinances that pass something that supersedes that law, just like Act 101, it's very hard to enforce that law when Pennsylvania already came up with a unified code and took Cabo and Boca and combined them so that people, contractors and municipalities all were falling under that same guideline so that there wasn't, you know, one municipality did one thing, one did another. So you have to be careful because you can't just change it and enforce it.
There have to be an exception to.
Right. Thank you. Are there any other comments on this topic?
So I guess, when we go through this, I would like to get, an idea from somebody knowledgeable, as Dave said, about what the potential costs of these additions to the building code would be for the actual construction. I mean, you know, I don't have I read the materials online, but there was some reference in there about aligning roof lines for solar or something. I mean, that seems pretty major if we're talking about having something like that in the ordinance.
Not anything else.
It would, I know I read it on, what was it?
Maybe it's a sample or anything.
It said something about structural changes in aligning roof lines for solar.
This is all conjecture, some things that we can consider.
It's the beginning of the discussion.
Okay, well, that is not minor. I can guarantee you that's not minor.
They have to work on it and bring it back.
Okay.
Right now, it's nowhere.
So Craig Kokoska again. So I did do some due diligence on that today and I talked to an electrician. So to set up a 2-inch conduit for a future electrical EV in a garage would roughly be in the cost of $1,500 to $2,000 to run it from the panel area in the utility room to the garage. And then to do it into the attic, you would need 3 to 4 2-inch conduits. And that would roughly cost you about $2,000 to $2,500, maybe a little bit more, also running from the utility room to the attic. That's roughly what he said. He did one today, so that's what he told me it
Right,
cost.
it would be passed on to the homeowner.
He passed on to the homeowner and then the township would have to have the inspection on it.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or do we, one more?
Hi, I'm Beverly Butta, 7 Adelphia Lane in Chester Springs. And I would just put out there, you know, some concern from residents. When we go to discuss the definition of what is an addition or what is an upgrade, there's several residents, for example, that might be taking care of elderly parents that need to add on to accommodate accessibility. Does that mean we have to install solar, EV, even though we don't have vehicles? So I would like to see in the discussions going forward, very similar to some of the costs that Craig just outlined. What are those total costs? Because solar itself has costs per panel, reinforcing roofs, maintenance, what happens when they break, what happens when you have to replace your shingles and they're already installed, what happens when they dispose of. And then there's ecological debt. We have very good friends who have run submarine bases and they've refused solar because the debt that once they break, where do they go? Certain landfills take them. What do? They sit there and pollute. So I would just hope that we look at it holistically and hear residents' needs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Taylor, Phillips Lane. It's my understanding that only so much capacity for solar can be put onto specific areas of a neighborhood. So like if we're saying there's like new construction and the electric grid may not be able to handle like all 10 houses in that new neighborhood having solar. So like it would seem unreasonable to ask everyone to put the conduit in. Thank you.
Dave Buck, Delphia Lane, just to follow on, if the market, we should really let the market drive if people want this. Like Craig said, it should be an option, not mandated. If it's such a great idea, why isn't the market clamoring for all this to be built in, other than a few people who'll speak loudly and think, we're going to save the environment or save the world, and China's building a coal-fired plant every week. So I think it really should be market driven, and I think it's too much government overreach to require this and force it upon the residents. Thank you.
King River, Green Lane. I'm not even sure how I want to phrase this. But if the township were to require that under a, in quotes, major renovation, we don't know what that is, that you spend whatever the figures were to put in conduit or an EV charger, whether you want to ever buy an EV or not, whether you ever want to put in solar or not, that's not going to fly. We've lived here for 50 years in September. And we were surprised recently in looking into some possibilities at the ordinances that have been passed since then that absolutely floored us in terms of nickel and diming, all kinds of stuff. And while conduit to in the event that you might want to possibly put in conduit for these two purposes specifically. And if you do it this way, you're going to save money in the long run. If I never want an EV, if I never want solar panels on my roof, then I don't know why the township has the authority to tell me that I have to do that.
Yeah, thank you. No one's saying that at this point.
Right,
Thank
just
you.
putting it in.
Thank you. Okay, I think we exhausted that, and we appreciate the Clean Energy Transition Team for bringing these ideas that are out there, and we'll definitely have more discussion on that. And next we have the Traffic Safety Committee update. And Alan was going to come and tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
Thank you. In light of the ban that's being enacted, the burning of aggressive drivers and tailgaters has been postponed this Friday. I had asked Tommy if I could be on the agenda for tonight. Thank you for agreeing to that time. I'm going to make it really brief. This is a PSA. It's a public service announcement. It's about the Traffic Safety Committee. A lot of you probably don't even realize that there's a Traffic Safety Committee, and so we wanted to kind of change that. I think I saw Jane. Jane is a member. There are 7 of us in total. Some of us you probably know, some of us like Jane have lived here for quite a long time. Marty Blumenthal, who's a fixture here in the township for all of like 90 years. He's a member as well in good standing. We meet every other month. We meet the second Thursday, and we're meeting this coming Thursday right here at 7 o'clock. You're welcome to join us. Real briefly, what we're all about, for the most part, we're about education. How better to enact rules and guidelines or safety in general by education rather than enforcement. So that's what we're all about. We're trying to do things like we had an AARP driving class here, 2 classes actually, just a few weeks ago. It was open to all of you. It was just $22 or thereabouts, if you remember. I think it was 20. And just education, things I got to learn that I thought I knew, and I was very incorrect. I've been driving for quite a long time. And I also got several $100s off of my insurance because of taking that class. We're having a bike rodeo coming up, hopefully at Ludwig's Corner in September. So there'll be information put out. If you read your newsletters, you'll see that with each issue, we put out little did you know facts and figures, things about the township. One of them, people complain about the roads here all the time. That's one thing we all have in common is we're all commuters. We're on these roads, and I wouldn't be surprised if you complain as much as I do, because we have a lot to complain about here in the township and outside of it as well. But what I learned is a lot of the things that I used to complain inwardly about, I can do something about. Most of the roads here are state roads. Nothing that the folks here can do anything about, unfortunately, but the state can. And we have a conduit to the state within the PennDOT website. And all you have to do, if you see that big pothole that's right over there, just tell the state. Now, the answer for a lot of people is going to be, well, it's the state and they'll never get to it. And, they'll take years and years. But that's not the case anymore. It is the state. And a lot of things, a lot of projects take a lot of time or may never happen in our lifetimes. But when it comes to simple things like fixing potholes in and around this township, I have it on good authority with PennDOT. They look at each and every result that comes in through the website or by calling them, and they have to act on it. They're mandated to act from the state, so they have to follow their own advice with it. So for all the people who are complaining about the township roads here, do something about it. And again, I didn't know that until I started attending these meetings, that we really do have a lot more power than we realize. We worked together with local police, who was just fantastic. And they really do look toward everyone's safety and try to enact enforcement. We also, and I'll keep this really brief, we also look at traffic safety zones. We started recently to enact within our committee areas that we're focusing on to just try to make them easier to navigate, or at least educating commuters, bicyclists, pedestrians, equestrians. This is an area that could present some caution. So again, just to get that education out there. A case in point, and this is one of Jane's beefs, the Sheeter Hall Bridge. Beautiful bridge, oldest bridge here in the county. There's a lot of issues that happen with that bridge. I don't know about you, but I've been caught more than once in a standstill when the car didn't yield when they were supposed to. And that's just the tip of the iceberg with it. So we're trying to address these issues again through education, discussion, and getting the public to be a part of it. So just to kind of conclude, I want to share with all of you that you have a traffic safety committee. We're all volunteers. We'll be meeting this Thursday and again in September and so forth. And you're invited to join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any comments? Okay, thank you for coming out. So we still need to approve our minutes from June 16th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from June 16th.
I will second that. Do we have any comments on the minutes that were posted? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, approved. And lastly, we have public comment. Do we have anything else left to say? Come on up. Yeah, this is non-agenda items too.
I just had a question, a curiosity, actually. Who is it in the township who's responsible for keeping the corporate townships Dun and Bradstreet numbers up to date?
The what? I'm sorry, say it again?
These are the EMA filings.
What's that?
These are the EMA filings.
Well, I just know that the township has 4 D&B numbers.
Yeah.
2 different addresses.
But normally it's a finance director's position or my position.
Okay, because one of them says out of business.
Okay.
And of the other 3, there's 2 of them at this address and 1 at another address, which I think is over on
The previous address, maybe.
it's the previous address.
We'll look at that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jack Blanchett, Fellowship Road. I just wanted to follow up on the comment that the officer made at the May 19th meeting about being down 5 positions. Where do we stand on filling those positions and how long have they been open?
I'm just gonna say that was not exactly correct. He was looking at the highest we ever were, and some of them were part-time people, and we are down a few people, and we are working on that.
So we're down.
So I don't know if you want to say anything more. We're looking for 2 officers, and we have, what do we get?
We have one
Quite a few.
officer on leave and we're interviewing right now for the 2nd position.
We got quite a few.
How long have they
people
been
interested.
open? How long have they been open?
The search has been open for about 30 days and they're in the interview process now. Just starting the interview process.
We had many good applicants, so we're hopeful that in short order, we're gonna come up with some good ones.
Thanks for asking about that.
I'm sorry. It's Craig Kirkowski. On the meeting minutes, you spelled burning wrong. Yeah, BURINING. Just making a statement. I saw an email that Dana had got about Barrington Road being repaved and you were going to pass that on to Tommy. And I was wondering like where we're at with that, because it seemed like it was paved like 4 or 5 years ago and stoned. And I wonder, is there a list of the roads that are going to get maintained and paved or something chipped or done with this summer? Is there a list?
Yes.
That's a public list?
Yeah, so that was part of our road program that we adopted at our last meeting on June 16th.
It was published.
Yeah, it was published. Beginning with the budget in 2026, there'll be an exhibit to the budget document that lists our best thinking of roads to be resurfaced or treated otherwise within the next 1 to 5 years, then 6 to 10 and beyond 10. Just a general guide, and as conditions warrant, we'll make those adjustments every year. But by putting it in the budget document, it provides some structure. So every single year, we're taking a look at a few years in advance, thinking about what's required to maintain the infrastructure.
Does someone drive around? Is that what you do?
Yeah.
And you take a look and
I mean, Public Works will take a look at every road probably on a weekly basis, or
Right.
daily basis. I get out and try to do it at least every month.
Okay.
Make a big look.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? No, seeing none? We like to adjourn this meeting?
I move to adjourn.
Okay, second. We are adjourned. Thank you. We'll see you all next July 21st.